Which button is
I have to look at it.
serious.
It's just the arrow.
Technology challenged, folks. Sorry.
There you go.
Which
It's that one right there.
Okay. My name's Vince Phillips. I'm Director of Student Services, and it's quite an umbrella. Honestly, the biggest majority part of my day is dealing with student behavior. I work closely with the administrators in the county. They'll call me with different types of situations. We kind of work our way through, look at consequences. Some of the ones that are more severe, we look at an alternative placement, which I'll get to in terms of our gateway program, if the offense is warranted. So that's a majority of my day, is dealing with student behavior. But I also get to work with our counselors. They do a great job. They're on the front line with us. They do a tremendous job of supporting our students. And this, just some of the different things that they do. The daily counseling of students, that's something that you think about traditionally with a school counselor, helping the one-on-ones, but they also do a lot of classroom interaction, especially with the bullying prevention. The big focus for our counselors this year is getting in the classrooms, interacting with the kids and addressing it in a classroom setting. So the bullying prevention classes have been great. Aaron's Law, that's something that they do as well, and that is a classroom-based curriculum that addresses sexual assault, offenses of a sexual nature, teaching students how to report and respond. One of the bigger emphasis that we've had to do, unfortunately, the last couple years is focused on sexual trafficking. And unfortunately, just where we sit with 75 and 24 and then 59 down in Alabama, it's just it's a corridor for it. So it's something that we really put an emphasis on going over with Aaron's Law.
What ages does that start?
Okay, it's K through 12, but we do age-appropriate curriculum with it. So we might present something to the high schoolers in terms of their curriculum. Obviously, we're not going to teach that same thing K through 3, if that makes sense. With crisis intervention, managing student safety plans, that's when a student might be having some self-harm thoughts. Our social workers deal with, our school counselors deal with that, and we assemble a team there with that. That involves our SRO, administration, coming in and just kind of making it determine whether we need to bring in Benchmark, which is an outside agency of mental health professionals that determine what kind of care and what kind of plan we need to put into effect with those students that are having those self-harm thoughts. Red Ribbon Week, drug prevention, that just took place about 3 weeks ago, and we've got different activities throughout the week that focuses on the drug prevention. Care Solace referrals. This is an outside entity, Care Solace, that we've contracted with the last 3 years, and the best way to present it, it acts as a middleman, so to speak. If we've got a student that's going to require some mental health services that are beyond the school's scope, Care Solace does a great job of gathering that student information. We make a referral for them, gathering that information and then placing them with a mental health professional. There's some factors that go into it. How far can you drive? They'll set up a 20-mile radius if need be to get them aligned with the care that they need. So we've seen great success with that. DFACS referrals, they're in charge of that. If we suspect that a student is being harmed physically, mentally, or is in a real bad home environment, we make those referrals. We're mandated reporters, and we report those to the Department of Family and Children's Services. The big emphasis I've put on with our school counselors, when in doubt, make that referral. When I was a principal at Lakeview Middle School, if I even had an inkling that one of our students was in danger or was being harmed, we reported it. And my philosophy there was I'd rather over-report than under-report and then have something happen. So it's anonymous, but in a lot of cases the parents put 2 and 2 together. And I've had some spirited conversations with parents, but I always tell them I'm going to do what's best for the kids. And if it causes you an inconvenience or things of that nature, I apologize, but we're always going to err on the side of caution. And then the scheduling, monitoring graduation progress, college and career exploration, that's more of an emphasis in the high school, and gosh knows that's important, getting those credits aligned and ready for graduation, scholarship opportunities, that type of thing. So that's a pretty big responsibility in that area. Any questions on counselors? Social workers. We've got 5.5 social workers. We've got a part-timer. They provide direct and indirect services to students, families, and schools. And I've got some numbers that I'll show you in a chart in terms of the number of cases that we deal with. Resource development for clothing, personal care, utilities, rent, food, medical, dental, mental health. It is so much. These guys do it all. They don't necessarily work directly with the students. It's more of a family thing. They get referrals. And the big thing is just providing the different needs for our families, which is a big undertaking at times. Part of that with the social workers, Dr. Melissa Holcomb, McKinney-Vento Homeless Program. That's a law that provides services for our homeless children. And that can be in terms of transportation, medical care, fuel vouchers, things of that nature. So that's a big undertaking. Right now, we've got 192 students in the system that are in the category of McKinney-Vento being homeless. We also have foster care, point of contact. Dr. Holcomb does that as well. Right now, we've got 62 students that are currently being fostered inside the county. And once again, she provides services for them. Department of Juvenile Justice Liaison, Dale Wallace, has that job, and that's just a presence for the school system when juvenile court is taking place. His primary job is to provide information from the school part, attendance, grades, discipline, that type of thing when our students wind up in juvenile court, either through something that's happened at school or outside of school. The judge wants to have all the information he can at hand to make the right decision for the students. Catoosa Attendance Review Team, that's our CART team, that's attendance. When students have accumulated several unexcused absences and we don't really have a benchmark, we send out letters when the student's been absent 5 days and then 10 days, and then once it continues, that's when we call in a CART meeting. With the elementary schools, we meet over at the health department, and we meet in a room where the social worker, administration's there, but we also provide the nurses there. DFACS provides somebody, as does DJJ, and when they come in, I tell the parents, hey, this isn't a judge or jury. These are resources. We're here to talk about why your child's missing these days. What can we do to help you? So what we eventually end up doing in most cases is they sign an attendance contract where the only excuses that we'll accept at that point are doctor's excuses, or if something happens in their personal life, a funeral, things of that nature, we'll work with them. Unfortunately, sometimes parents don't get the message there, and we end up having to take them to magistrate court, and we have on occasion had to have parents arrested just because they're not getting their kids to school. Any questions about social workers and the roles they play? Nurses, my gosh. Nurse Janice at Lakeview Middle School, I would have never survived COVID without her. She is awesome. Our nurses do so much for students. Medication administration to students, that's on a daily basis. That could be a behavior medicine, things of that nature, but that's something they have to schedule. Assessments and treatment of general illness and injuries. Unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately, in a lot of cases, our nurses are the primary medical provider for a lot of our students, just simply because of obstacles that the parents might have in terms of transportation, time to get them to the doctor, and unfortunately, sometimes they just don't want to take them to the doctor. So our nurses, having the nurses in all of our schools is just huge. Hearing, vision, dental, and nutrition screens take place. The big thing with the dental, they arrange for the dental vans to come to schools and take care of our students that don't have insurance or are not able to get to the dentist. So that is a huge undertaking, and it's well worth it. Develop and implement health plans, train teachers and staff on medical equipment, such as the EpiPens, epilepsy meds, and the defibrillators, the AED machines, and then serve as medical resources for school stakeholders. Any questions about the nurse? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, how do we get those resources? Is there federal funds, state funding?
A mixture and some grants as well. Yeah, it's a whole mixture of it.
So Katusha has like an actual grant writer that can help?
We will have a committee if we have to. Me and Nurse Denise Self, she's head of the nurses, and if there's something out there that we want to look at in terms of maybe medical equipment that we want to try and get, she and I will sit down and do it. So we don't really have an official grant writer in that regard.
And the state gives us about $230,000 a year for nurses, which doesn't come anywhere close to covering the cost to have a nurse in every building. And so we pick that up as local property taxpayers. That comes from our local funds because we want a nurse in every building. And I can just say, like, I was at Ringgold Middle yesterday doing a reading training, and a student had a seizure, a 6th grade student, and the teachers caught her so she didn't hit her head on the floor, but that nurse was there like that immediately, keeping her head off the floor. The student was unconscious for 15 to 20 minutes while the ambulance service was en route, and that nurse was on top of it the whole time, monitoring her heart rate, monitoring her blood pressure. And as a parent, I just can't tell you like how valuable that is to me, knowing that my kids are in a building where even if they break their arm or something happens, that medical professional is on site.
These are just some of the numbers that in terms of interactions with counselors, social workers, and nurses, visits that they deal with on a daily basis. I've got it broken down in elementary, middle school, and high school. You could just take a look there at what we do, especially with the nurses, with the elementary. So far this year, 21,102 interactions, 292 per day. That's in the school. So that, like I say, the nurses are just unsung heroes. And then that with the high school, they have not seen, they've had 10,225 visits. A lot of that is classroom visits, getting those kids ready for college, filling out scholarship applications. It's just a plethora of things. Mr. Pierce does a good job over at the College and Career Academy with interacting with those kids that feed in from our 3 high schools. So that number's big, but it's accurate. Any questions on any of these?
Well, if you got anybody that complains, if these nurses wasn't doing it, should be a teacher pulled out of the class
Absolutely.
doing it.
Yeah,
And
you're right.
Compare costs.
Yeah.
And,
So I'm gonna say one thing, and guys, you should be so proud of me because there's 1,000 things I wanna say right now, and I'm not. I'm gonna say 2 or 3. When I get asked this question, and I see this on Facebook, and it hurts me. We've got more support staff than teachers. I know you've seen that if you got Facebook because they push it out. No, we don't. Number one, we've got 1,000 folks who are in the classroom. But do we pay for nurses in our schools? Yes, we do. Does it cost $1 million out of your property taxes and mine? Yes, it does. Is it worth it? I think it is. You can say it's not. I get that. And some people may think, no, that's not the school system's job. We shouldn't be involved in that. That's not the job of the school. Reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's not what the rest of the world believes. So when I get asked, why does it cost so much to run a school system? This is the simple answer that I want you to know when you leave. It is because the state does not simply expect us to educate kids. They expect us to raise some of them, not your kids. You're here. Your kids are like my kids. They're third base kids. They started with new shoes, new socks, new underwear, clothes that fit, trapper keepers, all those things that we got, new pencil box. Your kid's this is what I'm telling you. Your kid's gonna be fine. Trust me. Your kid is gonna be fine. But if you want to improve your graduation rate, if you want to make sure that as many kids in your community succeed as possible, stop looking at the top. They will be okay. I promise you. You've got to look at the bottom. That is where, those are the kids that are in danger of not graduating. Those are the kids who go to the nurse all the time because it's the only health care they get. Those are the kids who we're sending social workers over to their home. Those are the kids that he is, by law, required to file a defects report on as a mandated reporter. And if a school does not, they will get arrested for a misdemeanor and lose their job because their certificate is your ability to work. So if you lose that certificate, you're no longer a licensed plumber. You don't get to plumb anymore. You're no longer a licensed teacher. So when people say, why does it cost so much money? It is because the school system has become the social arm of the government. We are the social arm of a community. How do you get to everybody's kids? We'll put it on the school system. Tell them this year. So here's your homework. In January, next month, all of the legislatures are going to roll down to Atlanta and they're going to get under the Gold Dome and they're going to figure out all these new ways that we can improve schools. And every single year, I get a list of new rules, new laws that we have to go in and tell every single teacher, this year you're doing this year you're doing that. Your tank, no, that curriculum's out. This is the new one. No, we're not using that test. And teachers are tired. Because you said a bureaucrat told you how to do your job. Brother, look, there is nobody that thinks they know more about running a school than the people under the Gold Dome.
Amen.
And I want to say this to them, and sometimes I do and I get in trouble. Brother, because you graduated from school does not mean you know how to run one. It's different. But we have to obey the laws. And so what do I want you to know? I want you to know that all these things that he has shown you, it costs a lot of money. And some of them, we have a choice, like with a nurse. We could say, guys, we're not having nurses anymore in our schools. We just can't afford it. It's $1 million, we don't have it. But most of those things, they are a requirement of law. When that judge sits down and there's no person right there to pull up a kid and say, Johnny Jones is here today. How many absences he had? If that guy's not there, I get a call. Somebody's got to pay his salary. Who's going to pay for those 5 social workers? We do. So there are a lot of support staff. But it's not like they're just eating chocolate bonbons and watching ESPN. They're in people's houses. They're in the courts. They're in the nurse's office. They're making visits to homes. So what I want you to know about the things that have been said on state testing, state curriculum, and all these other ancillary things that the school system is required to do. Most of it is required. Most every bit of it. If we did not do it, we would get in trouble. It costs money. So you have to ask yourself, is it worth putting nurses in school or not? Is it worth putting an SRO? We paid $1 million for SROs in every school forever. So those are the things that you got to think about as you move forward and you think, should we be doing this or that? And I know that, I'm sorry, I will not stand up again.
I just have a question in relationship, or a statement in question, what you just said, that my wife does the mentoring. I don't know what the next one is, but if you truly want to see what he was just talking about with like the lowest student and get a sense of their lives, it's a great opportunity. I don't know when the next training though is, do y'all?
Sometime in January.
The training for
Yes,
mentoring?
we can attach that to the email we send out.
Okay.
So Shannon will send you the next mentoring date.
But that's a great way for people to see what
100%.
students are walking through. I
I
know
got-
my wife has really enjoyed this.
I got one statement to add to you. For those who really want to see school at work, go to Gateway. I spent an hour 2 weeks ago talking to the principal over there. That's a great progress. That's, they're trying to help these kids who are at the bottom, who are trying to get through school with no help from home. That's the problem with the nurses and the social workers. That used to be taken care of at home. If my son came in and a teacher called me and said he was misbehaving, we would whoop his butt. But today, you go jail.
Preach!
Yeah, preaching to the wrong one. But yeah, that's my 2 cents. Sorry.
I'm going to talk about Gateway here in just a second.
Yeah.
With enrollment, this year we've got 10,102 students, and just the process with the enrollment procedures, parents or guardians have to show a government-issued ID, a driver's license, birth certificate, 2 proofs of residency, or residency affidavit. And what we're talking about with the residency affidavit is they're living with somebody. So the person that they're living with has to come to central enrollment, and we have to verify their residence, and then they have to sign off on a document verifying that these folks are living with them. Okay? What we've done this year, and Mr. Nix has alluded to, guys, we got a great school system, and everybody wants to come to Catoosa County, legally or illegally. So what we've done this year, we've got a student service officer. His name is Jeff Rhodes. I've given him the nickname the Nighthawk. He's performed 64 residency checks, and of those 64 so far, 31 students have been disenrolled because they're either living out of county or out of state. Three of the main ways we get information on that, we get return mail. Mail's returned to us. School personnel spotted the child getting into a car with, say, a Walker County tag or a Tennessee tag. And third is probably one of the better ones. Kids like to talk. They'll let us know. Hey, we're actually living up in East Ridge. Don't say anything. Oh, I won't. And then Jeff will go out, Mr. Rhodes will go out, and it's not one visit. He'll go in the morning, he'll go in the evening, he'll kind of mix it up. We don't call them stakeouts, we call them observations. So when I get that phone call, he just came out one time, oh, no ma'am, we've had multiple observations, we verified. Your neighbor came out and said you moved out 3 weeks ago as well. So he does a great job with it, and it's just a good way to be good stewards of tax money. I mean, we want kids down here, but we don't want to educate the kids that are Tennessee residents or living over in
Well, those 31 that have been disenrolled, I got beat up on Facebook 28 times.
Gateway, which you talked about, that is our alternative school for students, unfortunately, that make real bad decisions. Right now, with the high school, we've got 34 students down there, and in the middle school program, we've got 26, total of 60. Guys, over 50% of those are drug-related, unfortunately, with THC vapes being so prevalent and readily available. It's tough. Barrett Blankenship is down at Gateway, does a great job down there, our administrator down there. We've got it divided into 2 tiers. Tier 1 is when you come in, and it's the most restrictive classroom. No privileges. You eat breakfast and you eat lunch in the classroom. But you have an opportunity. If you pull 10 consecutive green cards, and that's based on academics, behavior, and attendance, you work your way to the Tier 2 room, which is less restrictive, and really the purpose of that Tier 2 room is to get them ready to return to their home school. That's the ultimate goal. We don't approach it as a prison or somewhere to store the bad kids. We want to get them down there. They've got consequences they're going to have to serve, and most of them realize that. But it's our job to get them ready to go back to their home school, and that's what the Tier 2, the tier system is designed to do. Is just to get those kids ready to go back to their home school.
What percentage actually go back?
Let's see. They have exit interviews at the end. I would say we're probably 95%, but they know they've got to get in there and do the work, because with the exit interviews, when we first started this, you got to make believers out of kids, unfortunately. And that first go around when we did exit interviews, there were a lot of them that didn't live up to their terms, and they stayed, and we extended their time. Word gets out when we do that. So we saw a vast improvement. So our success rate down there is pretty good getting them out. Some of them return, unfortunately, yeah, they get back out and they make those bad decisions again. Do what?
Do they graduate from Gateway?
No, they just return to their home school for that, if that's what you're asking.
That's not a high school, it's not a high school, I asked the same question. Yeah.
No, it's an alternative school, a temporary staging for them in hopes of getting them in a position where they can return back to their home schools to continue in a regular school setting. Yes, ma'am.
Is this like one middle school classroom and one high school classroom? Or
There's
is
four.
this-
There's a total of four.
Okay.
There's
Do
two
y'all
high
do
school, two
mentors
middle.
over there, or is it just?
We do have some, but we can always, and I'll get to that in a little bit. Dr. Butler alluded to it. We have such a shortage of mentors, especially for this situation. We're looking to work with Bridge Health. Hopefully, it's an organization down here in Fort Oglethorpe. They're going to start coming in after Christmas break and doing some small group meetings with the kids down there in counseling. So we're trying to get those resources in there for them. Like Mr. Nick said, these are the kids that need it. These are the kids that are coming from the single parent home. These are the kids being raised by grandparents,
Or friends.
unfortunately.
Or friends.
Or friends, yeah.
Hey, Mr. Phillips,
Yeah.
Sean, to answer your question right there too, I mean, in theory, a student in their senior year, second semester, could be sent to Gateway, earn their credits, and graduate while there, but they would go back to their home school and, you know, and walk and do things like that, yes.
I would think you'd have a higher percentage of dropouts once they got this stuff.
Yeah.
A high school kid, he's over 16, he's been in trouble, he's no longer wants to go to school. So I would think that the percentage of people who actually get through that would.
Well, it's.
And we're looking at a placement anywhere from a semester to 9 weeks to a year, depending on the offense that they're down there with. But he's got such a good staff down there in terms of interacting with the kids, encouraging them to be there. We're not seeing a whole lot drop out once we've implemented this. I'm not saying we're catching them all, but
Well, I think that's their mindset of the staff there, is they realize that too. And so their focus is to make sure those kids don't. And to help them get through these consequences, but also tell them, hey, the support's here, we're gonna make sure you stay on track. We can even catch you up a little bit if you need that, because sometimes these kids do come already behind in credits. So you've got discipline hanging over you, plus you're behind in credits. And so the staff there really knows that, caters to that, helps these kids catch up. Plus, before the tiered system, there was really no criteria for you, you just went straight back. And I think the return rate was much higher because there was none of this to get you ready to transition back. And now that they have this transition plan, they transition back much more successfully, and so the return rates are dropping.
And we also have an additional layer in that each high school has kind of an in-house PLC. That's something that Mr. Nick started when he was the principal here, and Mr. Langford has continued, and then the other high schools have adopted. But they have a classroom here with a teacher who's really good at developing relationships, is really the intention. And so if those kids need a transition period, sometimes called dream catchers here, sometimes they'll go into that classroom, and then that teacher, they're in a small group. If they have, sometimes we have students in there with severe anxiety, different reasons. But it's an additional layer of support for some of those kids who struggle to be successful.
And when we were part of the graduation task force, if you analyze the reasons why kids dropped out, if we were looking at 32 kids, there'd be 33 reasons why they dropped out. There were some consistencies, but everything was just so unique. And so having these PLCs here really caters toward that student's individual needs that are unique as to why they are not.
And they've got some flexibility, so if maybe a student has to work because they need that income to support their family, maybe they come in, 3 days a week instead of 5, and they've got some online pieces that they do. So there's some flexibility just in that in-house PLC group at each one of the high schools.
So the coach.
Correct. So talk a lot about that.
do you have a question? Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
I have a question. So I'm seeing some repeated acronyms or whatever you want to call it throughout the slides.
We're great at that in education. And we expect you to know them all, and we just keep saying them like, you know what a PLC is,
Yeah.
Right.
But some of those are on the academic key, like the cards. And you said something about the red radar. Are these items related to this gateway or their attendance issues? like a lot of silos, but then in your examples, you talk about how things come together. And that's my question. How are they all coming together? Where does it all come together?
So like the PLC, the Gateway program, they're gonna end up there because of behavior, like severe behavior of some kind.
Weapons, drugs, serious violence, like they've broken a major code of conduct.
Terrorist threats.
And then within the building, there are layers like the CART, Catoosa Attendance Review Team. That's a team of people who meet when they have 10 or more absences, and then they're looking at the reasons behind it, talking to the parent, getting them involved.
Is that ever related to the behavior issues?
I mean, there are correlation. A student who's absent a lot might be a student who gets, but those are all just factors we want to take into consideration, and always things that we want to find the root reason behind why we're seeing behaviors or, a lack of success in the classroom. So we want to take all the information in and communicate that with the team of people who are there to support, so that we can do whatever is possible to find a solution for that kid.
And that's outside of your data reports.
Well, it's on those data room boards. So every student has a magnet, and it'll be color coded and have stickers on it. So when those teachers go in for their weekly, meetings and looking at red radar students, who are the students who are at risk not to graduate, they can pick up that magnet and know every piece of not every piece, but primarily every piece of information that's critical to determining why that student's not successful.
Including getting close, like behavior issues, getting close to.
Sure.
And so what I would say too on that to help, so is you think about it in a kid like your health. Okay, I go in, they check my height, they check my weight, they check my blood pressure, they check your blood work. These things are indicators. So when you see a kid that's missing a lot of school, that is going to be, that's a home issue. The kid, that's a home issue. Mom and dad not making the kid go to school. Because at 16, what happens? On card. You don't do it anymore. The law says you have to go to school until you're, after that, you can't even do cards. So we're begging kids to come to school. And the state, in all their wisdom, I'm not a fan of the state and education law. They make me mad because they do stuff like this. The only tool we had to get a 16-year-old kid or more was that driver's license piece. You don't come to school, I filled that form out, you're not gonna have your license. You're gonna come to school and graduate, we changed the law. So what do I have to get a kid here from 16 to 18 now? Nothing. Because mom can't even get the kid out of bed, and so that's where this comes in. So the way that all works together is these things are all high weight, because what they're doing is telling you, when they look at that, there's a problem. What's going on with this kid? That's kind of how it all comes together. And the data wall helps with that, because if a kid's over here failing every subject and they're not here and they're in trouble, the FBI will call it a clue.
One other question to follow up with that, high school looking at that, you could see a problem in the past, but what about the grade schools? Do you look at that, problems like that, with kids not coming to school?
Sure. So we have
try to help them.
academic support team meetings, and then BSIP meetings, which are behavior support team meetings, at our K-8 schools. And so our teachers are meeting regularly, and they are looking at every piece of data they can and trying to support those students, because we know that if we can fix the problem, if we can find help for the problem before they get to the 9th grade, we're going to be better off. So we're always trying to do that.
Or either say, hey, you need to watch this child closely.
Yes, they are. They're keeping a list of all those students for both academics and behavior, and then not just keeping a list, because we could keep a list all day and it doesn't do anything, but then trying to match all of our support systems to help those students be successful.
That's the hard part.
It is the hard part, and the time-consuming part for our teachers.
One entity that works in our schools, especially on this side of the county, communities in school, we have sites at Cloud Springs, West Side, Lakeview Middle, LFO, Ringgold High School, and Tiger Creek. And that's a focus on our higher poverty schools, so to speak. They've got site coordinators that work with the students here. They're referred to this program based on attendance, behavior, and grades. Like I said, the site coordinator provides support in the areas of academic assistance, life skills, mental health, basic needs, and behavior intervention. Over at Lakeview Middle School, Mom was the principal there. Our site coordinator was Mom. This gives the students a sense of family, that they're not, if you're in this program, you probably don't have a real good sense of family or family presence. That takes the place of it for the most part. And I think we're gonna take a tour of the site with Mr. Langford here. But the question, how can I get involved? How can we help in and outside the school setting to best serve our kids and community? We need mentors. We have got, we've got so many kids out there that are in need. We've got 900 kids, over 900 kids in the county that are either being raised by grandparents or an aunt and uncle. A vast majority, a good chunk of kids on this side of the county, they're getting raised by a single parent. We got a lot of moms raising these boys. These boys could use some mentors, and I believe we've got a training coming up. I think you're gonna
We'll send that information out.
get some information out. Guys, if y'all could spread the word out, mentors are so needed. I mean, if it's an hour a week that you can give, or 30 minutes a week, anything, we'll take. These kids just need to be around good, positive folks.
How do you ensure that they're good, positive folks?
You gotta do a background check.
Yeah.
We do. We have a vetting process and training
Yeah.
that kind of occurs, so.
On the previous slide, were those paid positions or volunteer positions?
Paid. They're paid through grant, not through the school system, but through grants.